Welcome back to the YouTube. Today we are going to talk about how to get over a long-term relationship. No, we're not. I just got asked that question. I still don't have the answer for myself. So we're actually going to talk about wheels or doors. Now, I think, and me and Andy have discussed this, we think there's more doors because every car has 4 doors, 5 if you count the boot, or apart from a small car. We're sat here in my kitchen and I think we can see in excess of 20 doors. No wheels. There's not a wheel in sight, I don't think. Can you see any wheels?
No.
Neither myself or Andy can see any wheels in this room. Not even any on his suitcase thing that he carries his camera in. So we're going to go with doors. I think what I'll do is I'll look it up at the end of the video and then we'll see if there is an answer. But I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. And then actually what we're going to talk about is deloads, refeeds, diet breaks and mini cuts. So I put out a little Instagram Q&A. I had a little conversation with some of my clients this week. So every 2 weeks, myself and the rest of the team Brightman do like a Zoom call where everybody can jump on and I will literally answer my clients' questions. I say one-on-one, but one to however many people jump on the call. And the topic of deloads, diet breaks, refeeds has come up quite a lot. So I thought I'd chuck mini cuts in there as well and we'll talk about that a lot. Okay, so point 1, deloads. This is a question that I get a lot. I've spoken about it a fair amount on Instagram, just in terms of like posts and on stories answering questions. I think it's one of those things that people think they need a lot more than they do. The question that sort of triggered this video was someone asked me, "Hi mate, I'm just planning out a 12-week training block. Should I incorporate a week's rest?" And I was like, no, why would you do that? Deloads, so you understand what they are. If you don't, or I think they can be called reloads as well, which is normally what I like to do. It's just some time away from that fully intense training that you will typically do if you train to failure, or even if you train RIR. I believe they have deloads scheduled in. It's a time where you take away from that 10 out of 10, every set to failure or within a proximity to failure, where you train 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 times a week, and where you essentially complete your full training plan. And the reason we do this is because after a while of training at that high intensity, you'll start to pick things up. So you'll start to pick up sort of systemic fatigue. You'll start to pick up localized fatigue as well. You may experience that your muscle soreness is lingering along longer than it should be. You may notice that your motivation to train is dropping because every session maybe something hurts and not in a good way, or maybe your performance is dropping. You may also notice that you get a bit more irritable. You may notice that your sleep sucks, your appetite maybe drops. So there's a lot of kind of symptoms that you could be overtraining. And that is why I will never ever just program a deload in, ahead of time. It's always going to be a case of, does this person need one? That's the first question you need to ask yourself. And honestly, I still think, and I think we've been quite open about this, particularly on the podcast as well, 90% of people are still not training to the level that they need to in terms of intensity. I don't think you're ever going to need a deload if you're not training to failure or close to failure, because you're never going to find yourself in a position of overtraining or sort of overloading yourself with fatigue. So that is kind of the prerequisite. Don't schedule them in, just wait and see if there are any signs that you might need one, which, as I just mentioned, potentially poor sleep, fatigue, irritability, motivation to train dropping, soreness picking up and not going away, so recovery dropping off, and I think I mentioned it, but motivation to train. But there you go. They're the sort of main signs of, okay, maybe I need a bit of a rest here. So if you've ticked off quite a few of those boxes, I think normally in my protocol, I wouldn't go straight in. If a client comes to me and they report a few of these signs, I normally say to them, right, okay, you've noticed this, let's give it just a few more days. Give it 2 or 3 more sessions or 1 or 2 more sessions. If you're still feeling really bad in a couple of days, then it might be time for a deload, provided you didn't just have one 2 weeks ago. Quite often, I think a lot of these feelings can be fixed by like one really good night's sleep. So maybe it's coming up to the weekend, I'll say try and get an extra couple of sleep cycles in, go to bed a bit early, don't set an alarm, see how you feel when you get up. If that doesn't fix it, then yeah, I think you might need a deload. There's a couple of ways around this. My preferred method is literally 4 or 5 days just away from the gym in totality. So a lot of my guys that train and do need deloads, they need them because they train hard. They love training as hard as they do all the time. So I think for me to tell them to go into the gym and do sub-maximal sets, maybe less sets than they're used to at lower weights, I don't think that's like an enjoyable experience. And if your motivation to train is low anyway, because you've been smashing yourself for 10, 12, 13 weeks, to then tell you to go in and do sub-maximal sessions, I don't think it's particularly optimal. Some people can do it, but for me, in the experience I've got and the experience I have with my clients, I don't think it's the best option. So I would say 5 days away from the gym. You'll be absolutely raring to go at the end of that 5 days. You should be well rested. You should use that time to get extra sleep in, maybe get some massage work done if you can. Anything you can do just to lower that stress and be ready to attack it when those 5 days are up. The other option is a typical deload. I think what I've just said there is like maybe an unload. So a deload would be just going into the sessions and doing maybe less sets or not going to failure, or maybe a combination of the two, a bit less weight and not to failure. As I've said, I prefer just to have people get out of the gym for a few days and come back refreshed and ready to attack it. So that is how I would approach a deload. When it comes to coming back to the gym, as with any time off the gym, you may be able to go straight back in at the intensity that you were training at prior, but it's worth just testing the waters there, I think, particularly on maybe higher risk movements, let's say like an RDL or a squat where your spine is loaded. Just be really careful. Maybe spend a bit more time feeding up to that working set before you jump straight in at heavy weight and potentially injure yourself. So that is deloads. Cool, so topic 2 is gonna be more food-based. So now we're gonna talk about refeeds and diet breaks. A refeed is typically a period of time spent with slightly higher calories than you've been maintaining at already. So let's say someone's dieting for a show, for a holiday, for a photo shoot, just dieting in general. Your calories are gonna be, they should be in a deficit, should be in a fairly good deficit by this point if you think you might need a refeed. That refeed is a period of time, normally a short period of time away from that deficit. So what you do is you boost someone's calories up, normally fill it up with carbs for, it has been known to be doing for 1 day. I don't think this is typically a refeed. I think it's just a slightly higher calorie day. Normally 2 days or more is going to show much more efficacy when it comes to the actual function of a refeed. Now, a refeed isn't something magical. It is a period of time whereby you input more energy, more calories, as I said, typically more carbs, to fill up intramuscular glycogen and potentially boost performance, improve pumps, give you a psychological break, which I think is actually the main thing that's mostly overlooked when it comes to refeeds, and give you a chance to feel better when you go back to that deficit. What you might see from a refeed, kind of a latent effect of performance. So let's say you refeed on day 1 and day 2, maybe day 2 and day 3, your training performance is a bit better for a short period of time. As I said, the reason is you got more energy going in, so you expend more energy. Muscle glycogen has had a big uptake, so maybe you're noticing better pumps, and that obviously makes your performance feel better. It gives the idea of a better session. And obviously day to day, maybe your energy is picked up just because you're eating more. Your mood might be better because you're not dieting on such horrible calories. Maybe you can fit in a slightly more relaxed meal because you have more calories and more carbs to play with. Who needs one? Who needs a period of time away from the deficit? Normally, someone who's been in a deficit for a long time. So this is typically why I don't think you will see refeeds with holiday fat loss clients or even photo shoot clients really until they're at the dog end of their prep. This is typically going to be required for someone in a competition prep, whereby you really are making them suffer when it comes to low food, high cardio, fatigue, and obviously training performance is dipping. So this will typically be implemented with someone who is already lean. They've already stripped off a lot of their body fat. They're already, in the untrained eye, very lean, shredded maybe. And you're inputting this in the sort of back end of their prep, whereby they need a little bit of boost to performance, because performance really is what holds on to muscle tissue. Also, as I said, a psychological break is a massive, massive aspect of this. Probably the one that's most overlooked. People always think about the pumps and the training performance, but actually that psychological break, that intermittent drop in stress, can lead to weight and fat loss as things move forward. What a refeed most likely doesn't do is boost your metabolism. It just gives you a chance to, as I say, take in more calories and therefore burn more calories, which is sometimes why you see, combined with the drop in stress, a drop in weight following a big intake of carbs. What I would say when it comes to refeeds is that if you're looking at really performance improvements or long-term gains from this period of higher calorie, it might be worth looking at a diet break. So a diet break, what is a diet break versus a refeed? A refeed might be 2 or 3 days with higher food, higher carbs. A diet break is a time whereby you put the client or the person back to maintenance for a week or 2. Studies have shown that people that diet for a long period of time and have a diet break in the middle lose more fat and keep more muscle over the long term. But obviously what you will see in that gap is probably a bit of a stall in progress. Now, who would use a diet break? I would say someone who's been dieting for 4, 5, 6 months or upwards of that. So someone who's maybe got a really long fat loss goal or just a really long prep. If you give them enough time, scheduling a diet break in will give them that chance again, a bit of mental and physical respite. So maybe a period whereby they can recover a bit better, a period whereby they have a bit more calories and a bit more energy, as we've spoken about in the refeed, and also just that mental break from a really low calorie state that they've spent a long time in. This does need to be controlled, as does refeeds, so it can't just be cheat meals. And it's probably going to be a daily, slightly lower increase than a refeed, because obviously a refeed, you've got a shorter period of time to do it. Diet break whereby it's going to be 1 to 2 weeks spent at maintenance. So let's say Dave's on 2,200 calories, but his maintenance is actually 2,800. Then maybe we put him to 2,800 for 2 weeks. And that just gives him an extra 600 calories a day to play with, and hopefully washes off that diet fatigue. So that at the end of that 2 weeks, he says, yeah, do you know what? I'm ready to crack on with my diet once again. So that would be diet breaks. Okay, so the final thing, which is I guess a little bit unrelated to deloads and refeeds, but still quite a big question, is around mini cuts or recomp phases or fat loss phases. So when should these be used? In terms of a mini cut is basically quite a short and aggressive fat loss phase, whereby perhaps you're in the middle of an off season, you notice a few markers are getting skewed because of that elongated off season. So let's say body fat levels are getting a bit too high, appetite is maybe dropping off a bit. You also may find towards the end of off season that you start to get lethargic, maybe your sleep gets poor because of the weight that you're carrying, and overall you're just not feeling too great. What we can do is implement a mini cut, typically anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks, a really aggressive period of fat loss. So let's say someone's bulking on 4,000 calories, you would literally slash a big number off of that. You may take it down to 2,500, maybe even lower immediately, and you'll quite quickly see quite a sharp drop in body weight. And then obviously you continue that on for the 6, 7, 8 weeks or however long you've got, I guess, in terms of budgeting time. What you should do by then is you're not looking to get shredded, you're not looking to get super lean, you're just looking at trimming off that kind of excess fat that may just be holding you back in terms of appetite, in terms of affinity to put on muscle rather than body fat, put you into a bit more of a responsive state. So in terms of if you've been hammering carbs and hammering food for months and months on end, body fat's high, your insulin sensitivity is going to be down, your ability to partition food to the right places is potentially going to be down, so maybe you actually just partition it to fat now. And we're going to basically improve our outlook for the rest of that off season by just having a bit of a tidy up, which is another name you might hear. Sometimes mini cuts go on for a bit longer. There's always a bit of a temptation to just take it a little bit further and make sure that you do get lean, because obviously people that are doing this, they're probably their end goal is going to be to do aesthetics, and therefore they might get a bit attached to that phase. I think sometimes this is fine if you do have a competition to look forward to and you are trying to build muscle for that show, then just use the mini cut for what it is. Trim off some excess body fat. By the end of that period, you should feel leaner, you should be a good deal lighter. Let's say a kilo a week loss might be a pretty good rate to go at if you are maybe 100 kg male. And then you should feel ready to start hammering food again, ready to start training hard and hopefully pushing your performance forward again, and obviously ultimately building muscle. How to come out of a mini cut, it's going to be the same, I would say, as how you come out of any fat loss phase. So it can't be immediately go back to 4,000. You're just going to see some pretty immediate fat gain. You want to slowly reverse that food back up. Your guidance here should be training performance mainly, but also is body weight flying up when I increase food, or is it stalling? If it's stalling, a bit more food until you've got back to a surplus, and then hopefully a fairly big one. That is what I would use a mini cut for, and I think that wraps up the video. So we've covered a decent amount of topics there. Hopefully you've got no questions, but if you have got questions on any of those topics, please put them in the comments. I'll come back to you. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.